They called her too big, and for good reason. Xantra, the towering alien empress of the Tar Dominion, stood at a massive 12 feet, her thick, muscular form radiating power. She was a force of nature, yes, but also a symbol of something that alien societies just couldn't stomach, something too much for the delicate balance of galactic politics. They mocked her for her size, her strength, and most of all, her ambition. Being larger than life wasn't something the Tar, nor any of the other species in the galaxy, could fathom as a good thing. Xantra wasn't just big, she was too big. Her every move, her every word, was met with derision. And while her race was formidable, it wasn't considered evolved enough to have a leader like her. She was a political liability. The Senate had decided. At the Galactic Assembly, where all the species of the galaxy came together to discuss interplanetary matters, Xantra's presence was treated with exaggerated eye rolls, huddled whispers, and attempts at subtle avoidance. The moment she entered the room, conversations halted. The small-framed, humanoid diplomats shifted in their chairs, uncomfortably adjusting their attire, desperately hoping that Xantra wouldn't take her seat too heavily. Too much muscle for leadership, a Xivian diplomat muttered, leaning toward the Vrelic representative. And she's got too much ego, you mean? The Vrelic replied, winking. Their shared laugh echoed in the room as Xantra strode past, her confidence irrefutable. The whispers were nothing new. She was used to being the elephant in the room, literally, but that didn't mean it didn't sting. Her kind was powerful, capable of great feats, but it was too much for the galaxy to understand. She was always considered the dumb brute, with a heart too large for diplomacy. And that's when Thorn, human diplomat and utter pain in the ass, walked into the room. "All right, people," he said in his loud, unmissable voice. "I'm here to ruin everything." The Tar and the others looked around, unsure whether to take this human seriously. Thorn, in his standard gray suit, was far smaller than any of them, yet his presence commanded attention. Xantra rolled her eyes. She had no patience for this arrogant Terran. Humans were often a spectacle, small, noisy, and brash, offering big words but no follow-through. She had met him once before, briefly, and even then, his bravado had grated on her. "You can't seriously be a diplomat, can you?" she muttered, crossing her arms, watching him stroll into the room. Thorn, hearing her mutter, glanced over and grinned. "I am. And that's the problem. You and I, Xantra, are gonna get along just fine." Xantra frowned. "Don't waste my time, human. They've already decided I'm not fit to lead because of this." She gestured to her height. "And I don't think you're in a position to change that." "Oh, I am," Thorn said with a cocky grin. "They think you're too big, right?" His smile widened. "I know what it's like. They said humans were too small, too, you know. Too weak. I'm the one who fought for the human race to get a seat at this table." He threw a quick glance around the room, deliberately ignoring the disapproving glares. She raised an eyebrow. "And what? You think because you're human, you'll be able to fix this?" "Hell yeah," Thorn said, stepping closer. "But you, Xantra, you're the one with the muscle. Literally." He pointed to her, then tapped his own chest. "We're gonna make them see what they've missed. You're not too big. You're exactly what this galaxy needs." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We're gonna start a rebellion." A rebellion. The thought should have been absurd. This human, this arrogant, too small, too loud human, was suggesting they could upend the political order with the very thing that had labeled her too much in the first place. But something about his confidence, about the sheer audacity of his plan, made her pause. Xantra's eyes narrowed, her fingers twitching at the side of her massive frame. "And what exactly is your plan, Terran?" "Simple," Thorn said, holding up his finger like he had it all figured out. "We're going to give them exactly what they want. We're going to play up the too big card. But we're not just talking about your height. We're talking about your presence. We'll make them so uncomfortable with your size, your ambition, that they won't know what hit them." Xantra snorted. "So, you're suggesting I become even more unbearable? You catch on quick." Thorn beamed. "Think about it. You've got the physical presence to dominate any room. You're a walking disruption. You've got power, strength, and let's face it, a body that screams leader. If we use that, the rest of the galaxy will have to reconsider the status quo. Who's gonna really challenge you when you're already bigger than them? You're mad, Santra said, though a spark of amusement flickered behind her stoic expression. How are we going to make the rest of the galaxy, hell, my own people, believe that someone like me should lead? Thorn chuckled. You're gonna do what humans do best. Use that too big persona to your advantage. Don't just be a leader, make them believe that no one else can do it as well as you. He grinned, tapping his fingers together like a villain in a movie. They'll underestimate us. And that's the best part. Santra tilted her head. You really think you can convince them? I don't think, Thorn said, lowering his voice to a whisper. I know. His confidence was contagious. Santra found herself nodding, albeit reluctantly. The idea was as absurd as it was brilliant, and she couldn't deny that part of her wanted to prove them all wrong. Maybe she was too big for their tiny little minds. Maybe the galaxy needed a change. We'll need a strategy, Santra finally said, her voice quiet but firm. But this, Thorn, this will be one hell of a fight. Thorn gave her a thumbs up. That's the spirit! We'll be the first ones to prove that too big is exactly what they need. Santra smirked. And if it doesn't work? Then I guess we'll be too big for them to ignore, he said with a grin. And just like that, the rebellion was born. Santra paced her quarters, the ceiling barely high enough to accommodate her. Her claws clicked against the metal floor with every step, each thud a testament to her size, her strength, and the discomfort that followed her everywhere. She wasn't built for diplomacy, at least not in the way the galaxy defined it. But now she had a human in her corner, and that changed the game in ways she didn't fully understand yet. Thorn, on the other hand, made himself far too comfortable. Legs crossed on the table, arms behind his head, he looked like a man waiting for happy hour. So, he said casually, you ever considered that being too big isn't the problem, just the branding? Santra stopped pacing and gave him a look sharp enough to draw blood. Branding? Yeah. PR spin. Optics. Whatever you want to call it. Right now, they see you as dangerous. But if we reframe that, make them see you as decisive, commanding, protective, then suddenly big isn't a threat, it's a comfort. She scoffed. You want to make me cuddly? No, he said, smirking. I want to make you inevitable. That gave her pause. You have power, Thorn continued, now on his feet and walking toward her. You walk into a room, and everyone shuts up. That's not weakness. That's dominance. They're not scared of your size, they're scared of what it means. You can't be controlled. So we make that your greatest asset. Santra crossed her arms. And how do you suggest we do that, little human? Stage 1, overexposure. Thorn grinned like a man with a match in a fireworks factory. You start making public appearances, crashing councils, giving speeches. Loud, bold, unapologetic. We play into the stereotypes so hard it breaks. Be bigger than life. Make them have to talk about you. I already make them talk. Yeah, but now we're giving them a narrative. One where you're not the problem, you're the solution they're too small-minded to see. She tilted her head. And you think I should just perform like some cosmic beast on display? I think you should make them choke on every word they use to insult you, he replied smoothly. Turn their too big insult into a punchline. Own it so completely that they can't weaponize it anymore. Santra was quiet, then let out a low laugh. You're insane. I get that a lot. They launched the campaign within days. Santra appeared everywhere. Interplanetary broadcasts, charity appearances, even a guest spot on Galactic Table Talk, a political infotainment show known for embarrassing its guests. She leaned into the mockery. When the host said, "You've been called too big to lead, too large, too loud, too much," Santra smiled and responded, "Better too much than too little, darling." It went viral in under 6 hours. The meme, Santra sipping tea from a human-sized cup, pinky claw raised. Caption: Too much for you? Good. Meanwhile, Thorn worked the back channels. He reached out to fringe factions, those disillusioned with the current leadership, those too small to matter until now. He spun stories of Xantra not as a brute, but as a shield. The one big enough to cover them all. Alien press had a field day. Headlines ranged from "Too big to fail?" to "When size becomes strategy." The double entendres ran wild. Every statement Thorn made had a punchy, layered twist. She's not just breaking the mold, she's crushing it under 12 feet of cosmic glory. Xantra, for her part, didn't care about the press. She cared about results. And results came when the Tar homeworld, long embarrassed by her unrefined image, started to rally behind her. They liked seeing one of their own refusing to bow. But not everyone was amused. The Galactic Order issued a formal statement. Leadership must be approachable, relatable, reasonable in scale and tone. That last phrase, reasonable in scale, became the next meme, with Xantra posing beside a terrified ambassador who barely reached her waist. "Is this scaled enough for you?" she quipped in the caption. Every jab they threw, she spun. Every insult she owned. But Thorn saw the pressure building behind her calm eyes. Alone in the war room, she leaned against the wall, exhausted. "They still don't see it," she said. "They're starting to," he replied. "I'm not a joke, Thorn. I know. But they don't. Not yet. That's why we keep pushing." She looked at him. "You really believe in this?" He nodded. "I believe in you. And more importantly, I believe they're too stupid to stop us." She laughed again. Not just amusement, something deeper. A release. "Then let's make it impossible for them to ignore me," she said. "Let's be too big to contain." They launched the second wave, rallies across neutral planets, speeches with brutal honesty, Xantra talking about what it meant to be feared for who she was. Not in a polished, sanitized way. Raw. Powerful. Human-like in vulnerability, but unmistakably Tar in strength. Crowds grew. Younger generations loved her. Even smaller species found inspiration in her rebellion. And still, Thorn whispered strategies in her ear, spun scandals into strength, and told jokes that made her snort in public. The press started speculating about their relationship. One Vrelic article asked, "Is the human riding her coattails, or just riding her?" The headline was immediately banned. Xantra printed it out and framed it. They knew it wouldn't last. The current powers wouldn't go down without a fight. But they were shifting the perception. What was once too big to tolerate was becoming too big to stop. Xantra stood before a crowd of thousands on Telari 4. Her voice boomed across the plaza. "They said I was too big to lead. Too loud. Too bold. Too much. But maybe it's time the galaxy got used to too much. Maybe it's time we stopped shrinking ourselves to fit their comfort." She looked at Thorn, standing beside her. He gave her a nod. "Because I am not too big. I am just big enough to fight for all of you." The rebellion had taken root faster than anyone could have predicted. What started as a whisper, a single human with a bold idea, had become a roar. Xantra, once dismissed as an oversized joke, now had a following that spanned several star systems. Her face was plastered on propaganda posters, her words quoted on every spaceport. Her reputation as a leader was growing, and she was starting to enjoy it. At first, the council had dismissed her as a fleeting annoyance. "Let her have her moment," they'd said. "She'll tire herself out." But as the weeks passed, it became clear that she wasn't tiring. And neither was Thorn. The human diplomat had become a legend in his own right. His sharp tongue, his relentless charisma, and his uncanny ability to make enemies look like fools had earned him the title of the unlikely prophet of change. It was ridiculous, but it was working. In their clandestine meetings, Thorn was constantly refining the strategy. "We're not just fighting for power, Xantra," he said one night, leaning over a holographic map of the galaxy. "We're rewriting the entire damn script." Xantra crossed her arms, her massive form dwarfing the table. We've gone from too big to just right in the eyes of the public. But I can feel the backlash. It's coming. Thorn leaned back in his chair, a grin playing on his lips. Backlash? Let them come. That's what they've been doing for generations, right? Making sure the big guys stay down. The small ones can't handle someone who doesn't play by the rules. I'm not some goddamn rebel with no rules, Santra growled, her voice low. I'm here to change the way they think, and I'm not letting them bury me again. Exactly, Thorn said. You're not some accident. You're the future. We're rewriting the idea of leadership. He had a point. She had been dismissed for too long. Her size, her power, her ambitions, every part of her had been scrutinized and laughed at. But now, those same attributes were the source of her strength. The galaxy had a new problem. They couldn't ignore her anymore. Thorn continued. And let's not forget the best part of this whole thing. While they're busy underestimating us, we're out here gathering support. We're winning hearts. He stopped, pointing at her. We are the underdogs, and nobody roots for the established order anymore. It's over for them. Santra tilted her head, eyes narrowing. But they'll still try to take us down. The moment we get too big for them to ignore, they'll hit back with everything. And we'll hit back harder, Thorn said confidently. With everything we've got. This time, we make it so they can't hide behind their shiny little lies. The words sank in. They both knew it was only a matter of time before the established powers would strike. They had to stay one step ahead. Over the following weeks, the rebellion grew bolder. More planets, more races, and more species joined Xantra's movement. The Tar Empire, once a joke on the galactic stage, was starting to attract attention, and that terrified the old guard. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The Council finally took notice, and the pressure on Xantra grew exponentially. News outlets began speculating more aggressively, hinting at her rise to power. Alien factions who had previously dismissed her as a physical anomaly were now wondering if the Tar could actually become a dominant force in the galaxy. The idea of a too-big empire was now on the verge of becoming a reality. That's when the Council made their move. A formal decree was issued from the Galactic Senate. Xantra of Tar is an unstable and dangerous force. Her presence threatens the delicate balance of power in the galaxy. Immediate action is necessary to prevent the collapse of the interstellar order. Thorn's reaction was immediate and cutting. Well, I guess that's our cue to escalate, huh? Xantra's lips curled into a grin. I suppose they think they can control the narrative again. They won't. We play their game, but better, Thorn said. We double down. Take their weapons and use them against them. Meaning what? Meaning this, they want to label you unstable? Let's give them exactly that. But we're not just unstable, we're unpredictable. Xantra leaned in, intrigued. Go on. Thorn's eyes gleamed. You do what they expect. But you do it in the most ridiculous way possible. Be the chaos they're afraid of. Embrace it. It was insane. It was absurd. It was everything they had done so far. Thorn had been right all along. The Council couldn't control her. They were now the ones being controlled by the narrative she'd spun. Xantra had become more than just a too-big joke. She was the storm waiting to strike. Every broadcast, every speech, every public appearance had chipped away at their certainty. Now, with the new decree from the Senate, the gloves were off. Time to hit back, Xantra said, standing tall. Thorn grinned, leaning back. It's time to remind them that sometimes, the galaxy needs something too big to work. They continued to push forward with reckless abandon. Xantra made herself known in even more outrageous ways. A speech on the homeworld of the Relic, followed by an impromptu wrestling match with the Relic ambassador, drew crowds. The media ate it up. The narrative of too big to fail had taken on a life of its own, and now the galaxy couldn't look away. The rebellion was no longer just about politics. It had become a symbol, a movement. The galaxy's underdogs were rising, and they were doing it in the most unorthodox, unpredictable way possible. And when the Council tried to strike back, they did so with a force they never expected. Rather than face their opposition head-on, they attempted to sabotage Xantra's reputation. They spread rumors that her rebellion was nothing more than a human-led hoax, a trick to destabilize the Galactic Order. They couldn't understand that it wasn't just a rebellion, it was a revolution. Xantra smiled when she heard the news. Thorn, ever the strategist, raised an eyebrow. "Is it time?" Xantra grinned. "It's time." And just like that, the final phase of their plan began. They weren't going to fight the Council with weapons. They were going to fight with the very thing that had made them so dangerous in the first place: their unpredictability. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. Now, it was time to remind them that sometimes, the galaxy needed someone who was too big to fail. The war for the galaxy had officially begun. It wasn't a war of starships or laser fire, at least not yet. It was a war of perception, and Xantra was the general leading the charge. Every decision she made, every move she took, was designed to dismantle the power structures that had kept the galaxy's elite comfortably in control for centuries. The established powers weren't just afraid of her strength, they were terrified of what she represented. Her strategy was working better than even Thorn had predicted. The more the Council tried to contain her, the more she pushed back, harder and faster. They tried to discredit her, to label her a threat, but in doing so, they only amplified her message. Too big? She was bigger than they'd ever imagined. Too loud? She was shouting in their faces. Too ambitious? She was going to remake the galaxy in her own image. The movement that had once been dismissed as a joke had morphed into a full-scale rebellion. Xantra wasn't just the leader of a ragtag group of dissidents now, she was the face of a revolution. What started with a few sympathetic voices had become a wave of defiance, and it was building momentum at a frightening pace. Thorn, who had once been nothing more than an annoying diplomat to her, had become indispensable. His knack for manipulation, his ability to play the political game with a devil-may-care attitude, was exactly what they needed. Together, they were unstoppable. He played the behind-the-scenes strategist, while she took center stage, owning every moment with a defiance that was both brutal and beautiful. But no one could ignore the fact that the Council was growing desperate. They weren't just sending statements or using their usual media tricks anymore. They were deploying their most formidable weapon, assassination attempts. It started small, a ship crash, a failed sabotage of a public appearance. Nothing that seemed too serious. But soon the attacks became more frequent, more coordinated. Xantra could feel the walls closing in around her, but each attempt only seemed to strengthen her resolve. Her size and presence had once been her curse, now, it was her shield. The Council didn't realize that with every failed strike against her, she became more untouchable, more mythic. And the rebellion she'd sparked? It was growing into an unstoppable force. Thorn, ever the optimist, was already planning their next move. "I'm telling you, Xantra, we turn their little assassination attempts into publicity gold. Let them try. It's just going to fuel the fire." Xantra's eyes were cold, but the faintest glimmer of approval passed over her features. She hadn't considered using their violence against them, but now that he mentioned it, it was perfect. "So you want me to stand there, after they try to kill me, and wave at the cameras? Oh, you missed, but hey, thanks for the attention." "Exactly," Thorn grinned. "We're not just fighting for a seat at the table anymore. We're fighting to redefine what power even is. The galaxy's not used to seeing someone this big brush off assassination attempts like a fly on a sweaty back." Xantra snorted. "You really have a way with words." Thorn winked. "Hey, I'm just being honest. Besides, how do they hit something that big, that strong? They can't. And that's the point. Let them waste their time. We'll keep doing what we do." It wasn't long before their plan went into action. Another assassination attempt, this time a well-coordinated strike during one of Xantra's high-profile rallies. The would-be attackers were swiftly dealt with. Xantra barely broke a sweat. She was so large, so imposing, that she simply crushed their ambush underfoot, metaphorically and literally. The next day, the news was everywhere. The Galactic Order was calling for her removal, labeling her as a dangerous political figure. But the public wasn't having it. The people were speaking out in droves. Some had always supported her, but now the fence-sitters were hopping off. The rebellion wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about a new way of thinking. They didn't want a small leader, someone meek and easy to manipulate. They wanted power. They wanted strength. And Xantra, with all her size and ambition, was giving them exactly what they needed. Xantra watched it all unfold, her fingers drumming on the armrest of her command chair. "You were right, Thorn," she muttered. He grinned from the other side of the room, his arms crossed. "I know. I've always been right." She shook her head, but the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her. "How do you do it? How do you make them believe we're unstoppable?" "It's not about convincing them," Thorn replied, his tone a little more serious now. "It's about making them feel it. People don't want logic. They want power. And right now you're power in its purest form." Her eyes softened slightly. "And if we fail?" "We won't," he said, his voice absolute. "This movement is more than just you and me. It's a galaxy waking up. We've already won the first battle, just by showing up." Xantra let his words settle in her mind. He was right. There was no turning back now. They had come too far, and the galaxy was starting to realize that, despite all their best efforts, they couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. As the months went on, the rebellion continued to grow. No longer just a ragtag group of insurgents, they were now a legitimate political force. Xantra's rise was inevitable, and the more the council tried to silence her, the more impossible it became. But the war wasn't over. They were still playing on the edge, walking a fine line between rebellion and full-blown revolution. The council, however, was getting desperate. The attacks intensified. A few covert missions had targeted Thorn, but every attempt ended in failure. The chaos only made their cause more appealing to the masses. They were no longer just defending themselves, they were proving a point. Xantra could feel the walls closing in. But she wasn't scared. She was ready. Ready to fight. Ready to lead. And so, when the final confrontation came, with the full might of the Galactic Order bearing down on her, she was calm. She stood taller than ever, her confidence unshaken. Thorn, her ever-present ally, was by her side. In the end, the galaxy would not be able to ignore her. They would not be able to stop her. Because Xantra, the too big, alien empress, had turned her greatest weakness into her greatest strength. And she was unstoppable.